Hi everyone, it's Daphne from Scrap and Create. Today we're going to build a base mini album, and it's going to be a 7x7, and that's going to be the pocket page size. The overall size of the album will be 7.5 by 7.25. And this is just a base album, and then from that base I'm going to do some customizations, but today we're going to focus on just building the base album. So with that, I'll get started. We need a couple of things. You're going to need some score tape, various sizes. At least two writing instruments. I've got a pencil and my jelly roll, which I just love. A score tool, a folding tool, a couple of straight edges, some scissors, and you'll also need a trimmer, which I don't have in frame right now. I like to use my paper clips to keep things organized. This is my spacer, which I built myself based on the chipboard that I'm going to use for the cover of the mini album. And the way I build this jig is I cut 3 pieces of the chipboard, glue them together, and then that's the distance I'm going to use. And I'll demonstrate that later on. And you're going to need some good black cardstock. So most of the designs that you see that I'll be working on, I use this Astro Brights cardstock. And I actually picked this up at Walmart. It's a real deal, and the paper really holds up well. It scores well. The scores hold up over time. So this is pretty much what all my base albums will be made out of. I use the Astro Brights Black and then also Astro Brights White. And like I said, I pick up both of these from Walmart. One of the things that you're going to need is some chipboard. And I've already trimmed my pieces down. And I wrote a sheet somewhere. But it's 7.5 by 7.25. So it's 7.5 lengthwise, 7.25 height, 2.5 inches by 7.25 for the spine. So go ahead and trim those up and set them aside. The next thing we're going to work on is getting the cover put together. So we need 2 12x12s, and I typically don't pre-cut any of this. I just get my papers, put them together, and then line up my chipboard and then trim down based on where the chipboard actually lands on the paper. So I'm going to go ahead and put these 2 12x12s together, and then we're going to lay the chipboard back on top of it. So I'm going to lay down a strip of my adhesive, score tape, my preferred, and my preferred size is 3/8 of an inch because it fits perfectly on a 1/2 inch scored flap, which you use to adhere most of the hinge pieces and any of the flaps that you add to the book. That way you don't have to put down 2 strips, 1 strip, and one and done, as they say. Now let me find, I forgot to mention you need a pick tool. And right now I'm digging for mine, but here it is. Okay, so that I'm going to go ahead and sit down. Looks like I'm staying in frame. I put some little cheaters out here, so if I stay behind my little markers, hopefully I'm in frame. So we've talked about this before. It's not really worth stressing over because you're going to square it off based on trimming the 2 sheets down to fit your actual cover. But I usually lay down one side first, and remember, when you're laying it on top of your adhesive, you don't want to have a lot of leftover here, or this will flap around when you finish your paper, your album, and you'll have to lay down a bead of glue to hold it in place. So I lay it down as close to the edge of that tape as I can get. And it's okay if you don't. You just come back and lay down a bead of glue. Okay, so now we've got our 2 12x12s adhered together. I forgot to mention it, but remember we talked about this in my last videos. Always look for the grain because you want the hinge of the album to be going with the grain. I did that before we started. So I know that my book is going to fold this way, and I'll be going with the grain of the paper. And if you don't remember, the way we do that is you kind of fold the paper over both ways, and one side it'll fold a little, it'll want to fall on itself a little easier. That's the grain. That's the side you want your spine to be going on. Okay. Last time I didn't do this, and I will this time. placing your spine first and then working out. That way you ensure that this seam between the two 12 by 12 pieces of paper is adequately hidden behind the spine. You definitely don't want to get it here in the crease where the cover and the spine come together. So I'm going to lay this down first. I'm going to use my ruler now. And I'm going to put just a guideline on the bottom, and this is a little over 1 inch wide. I just used the width of the ruler. You can either score a line or draw a line. I like to draw a line. This is going to be on the inside, so it doesn't matter if you can see it. This is just meant to help you get your chipboard placed. Okay, so there's my, yep, you can see it. Good. I just checked to see that I was in frame. There is my guideline. So I'm going to lay down. I'm just dry fitting everything right now. Lay this down, and then I need to check my 7 1/4. So it's going to go 7 1/2. I wrote some notes here, factory. So these are the factory cut edges. That means they're really crisp. I'm going to have those go toward the outside of the book, and my personal cuts will go toward the inside. Factory. So you can only do that on 2 out of the 4 sides, so it's not that big of a deal, but it's just a good habit to be in. 7 1/2. Okay, so they go in this direction. Let me find my marker. I'm going to write on this so you guys can see it while I'm chatting, but this is 7 1/2, and this is 7 1/4. 2 1/2 by 7 1/4. So you go. So you need 2 of these, 1 of these. Okay. So everything's going to fit fine. I'm going to go ahead and lay down my tape on my spine and get ready to place that. So it'll just take a few minutes to get all the tape down. So hopefully everybody's doing well. I'm excited. This is our second album. This is just a base that we're building today, but I'm going to build on top of that base over the next couple of videos. So in the end, we'll have hopefully another beautiful album that we've all worked on and put together. I like to use a lot of adhesive on the spine because it gets a lot of movement. Okay, and can I squeeze that in? I think I can. I'm going to go ahead and do that. There we go. And I might not go quite so heavy on the other pieces, but let's get this in. Go ahead and burnish all that. It is Friday. I can't believe it. So this morning, I had to run with my son down to get him registered for school. So he starts next week. So that'll be kind of nice for me. I will have a little more quiet time to work on getting videos done. He is an avid music lover, and so there's always music in the house when he's home, and it makes it kind of hard to videotape. Though I'm sure within a day or two I'll start missing him not being here all the time. Okay, so we're going back to our 12 by 12. We're looking for our seam. And remember, the seam you see here is going to be offset from the one in the back, right? Because of the amount of tape. So you may want to kind of eyeball that. So it looks like if we set the seam at about 2/3, then we'll have on the front side the seam that will be almost in the center. And these are, I know, minor details, but if you're going to put it together, you might as well. I'm going to turn it upside down. This edge looks a little straighter to me. Might as well spend some time and get it as straight as possible. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and lay that down, press it down. I'm not going to burnish it yet. I'll wait until I flip these over. I'm going to go ahead and double check my measurements, make sure I'm laying down the cover in the right direction. 7 1/2, yes. So remember, even though our pocket pages are 7 by 7, we want some excess on the edges of the book so that any inserts that we have are protected. So this is the right direction, this is the right orientation. I'm going to go ahead and put some tape on this, and we're going to get ready to lay it down. And then I will show you again how I use my custom built jig to get equal distance between the chipboard pieces. It's a little counterintuitive, at least to me. I always thought when I first started scrapping that you would want the space between the spine and the covers to be tight, but that's actually not the case. You want to give it a little bit more room. And I've tried spacing it with equal, just one chipboard width. I've tried 2, and I now use 3. So that's based on a fair amount of experimentation. So hopefully you guys can benefit from some of my experience there. Okay. Alrighty. Now these are relatively large, so I'm going to put a little bit more tape on here, but then I'm going to use my art glitter glue on the balance of the chipboard to hold it in place. And if you have not tried art glitter glue, by all means, you need to. I was a big fan of Scotch tacky glue, and it's pretty good. I do like it. What I don't like about it is it does not dry matte. It dries shiny. So if you're outside the lines in any shape, there's no getting around it. You cannot cover it up. You can't go back over it with a Sharpie. You can't do anything to mask it. It's just shiny. So so you get pretty skilled at using the glue. That was one of the things. But then I discovered this art glitter glue, and I'll never go back to Scotch brand tacky glue because it's, like I said, it's shiny, unless I wanted something to be shiny deliberately. Okay, I'm going to burnish all of this, go ahead and take off the backings, and then lay down some. And then, before I put the glue on, check again the orientation before I lay it on my 12 by 12. Sorry, that was kind of loud, 7.5, so it goes this direction. So I'm going to keep it in the correct orientation so I don't accidentally lay it down in the wrong direction when it comes time. And by the way, if you're interested, this is a just a pick tool. Almost all of the die cutting machines have one. This happens to be from Silhouette. I really like it. Reminds me of a dentist tool, actually. But boy, does it save me on my fingernails. And not only does it save my fingernails, it's faster. I can pick the paper up much, much faster than I can with my fingernails. So I really recommend it. You can buy them individually. They come in a little tool pack, and you can get them just about anywhere. Okay, so remember, we've already laid down the spine. Here's my jig, and remember I used 3 pieces of chipboard glue together to give me the width that I'm looking for, okay? So, gosh darn it, I moved my hand. Now I gotta double check my orientation again. This is it. Okay, so we wanna place the jig as tight to the spine as possible, and then we're gonna place our cover just on the other side, and I actually press on it so that there's no space between the spine, the jig, and the cover. And then I want to inch it down a little bit, make sure I'm on my white base target line down below. Everything looks good. I'm going to lay it down. Okay, here we go. There's one. One more, and we'll so it goes this way. One more, and we will be able to start wrapping the album cover. Okay, sorry, I just bragged about how easy it was to pick those up, and I got stuck, so that's just the way it works. All right, so I know I mentioned it before, but I'm going to keep mentioning it, and coming up in October, we are going to be in San Clemente, California, We're going to have a 3-day scrapping retreat, which is going to be a lot of fun. This is our second one. I'll be there as well as my partner, Julie. And Ginger Rock will be joining us at the retreat, and she will be conducting 2 classes. And we're very excited about that. We just adore her. That's going to be a lot of fun. And that is the end of October, the 26th, 27th, 28th. And if you go to our website, www.scrapandcreate.com, you can find all the details. It's a quaint little hotel. It's not very far from the beach, and there's a huge outlet mall there, so you can scrap and get some Christmas shopping done. Okay, I'm doing the same thing. I am lining off my reference line on the bottom. I'm using my jig between the spine and the back cover. I am pushing the back cover onto the jig so that there's no space, and I'm laying it down. And that's that. So we have made some good progress here. We're going to turn it over. We're going to burnish everything. And then I'm going to, sorry, I was just putting the cap back on my glue. And then we're going to come back on, and this is too much to fold over, so I'm going to trim some of these pieces down. But first, we're going to burnish. All right. So the other thing that's happening, or is going to be happening soon, is the new Christmas papers are starting to come in. So you guys stay tuned. I'm hoping to get a couple of Christmas projects out quickly. So if you guys are interested in doing any gifting, that we'll have something for you guys to work on. We'll have the paper, but hopefully I'll have some tutorials as well. All right, well, that feels pretty good. I'm going to turn it over. And then this is excessive, so I'm going to go ahead and trim this side down. And I'm going to do the same thing I did down here, is I just used my ruler, the width of my ruler, which, by the way, is about 1 1/10. So you need at least 1 inch to do the wrap effectively. But, you know, if you want more, that's fine, but you don't really need a lot more than that. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this down based on just the width of the ruler. Okay, turn it around. I gotta stand up for this so I can get it all the way to the end of the paper. And then okay, and that's just trash. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on either end, so I'm not dealing with so much paper when I'm wrapping. Again, that's about that wasn't very straight, was it? About 1 1/8 inch wide. Okay, one more time. All right, now all of this is going to get folded over. I like to work my hinges a little bit right off the bat. Okay, I'm going to lay down some score tape. And actually, before I do the score tape, I'm going to go ahead and draw my lines. So I'm going to miter my corners. You don't have to, but I like to miter my corners because you get a lot of buildup. And this will help keep it relatively flat. I'm going to use the same jig tool that I use to space my spine and covers. It's a little bit fatter than I need, but I'd rather come back and trim a little bit off the corners than to have a piece of chipboard exposed. So this is just my kind of rule of thumb. I just try to angle it, just make the angles kind of even. Very little of this shows, so I don't waste my time trying to be too precise here. All right. close enough. And you can trim that with your scissors, or I'm kind of a fan of the straight edge. I'm just going to use, oops, I can't seem to pick that up. Use my eyeball, actually, to trim these. Normally I use an X-Acto knife, not a box cutter, but my blade's really dull, and I haven't picked up any replacements. But I have to say, using a box cutter, trimming down your chipboard pieces, wow, what a difference! It's so much easier. I don't know if the blades are stronger, sharper, or what, and I just have never gotten a good result of trying to trim my chipboard on a paper trimmer, regardless of what blade I'm using. I've just not had good luck with that. So I always trim those by hand. So few pieces, not a big deal. Okay, I think we're ready. I'm going to start folding in the edges and coaxing the paper fibers in the direction I want them to go in. Remember, the grain is going up and down, so that these pieces are going to be relatively easy. It's the outside edges on the link that are going to need a little work. So I don't fold them straight over. I kind of work them, and I'm sure you've seen this in lots of other videos. The reason why you don't fold it straight over hard is because you may crack your paper. So give it some time to line up. Even I think just the little bit of moisture from your hands helps. Helps the paper fiber kind of behave. And work it, work it, work it. All right, I think I'm ready now. Flatten these and lay down some tape. I like to lay down tape on the actual chipboard so that this edge has got adhesive, and then I lay it down on the top of what I'm going to fold over. And then you wind up getting pretty good coverage. Okay, flip it, do the same thing. All right, thanks everybody again for all the feedback that I've been getting. The next videos that, I'm running out of this size tape. The next tutorial videos that I'll be doing, I won't be trying to save the paper so that it can be deconstructed. So I'm hoping that makes things go a little bit smoother. I will continue to do the pre-cuts. I really don't think there's much value in you guys watching me trim things on a trimmer. But if you do have a preference, let me know. And I'll try to accommodate that as much as I can. So I also have learned a few tricks about video editing and uploading. So I'm hoping to streamline that process on my end so you guys don't have to wait so long. Some of the upload processing was taking forever, and I've found some compression tools to help me with that. So hopefully it won't take me hours to upload my videos like it had been previously. And that will all be good for you. So hopefully these new tools are going to help me when errors are spotted, we can get them fixed and get them uploaded faster. Start from the middle and then push out. If you have any excess, you want it to be on the outside, not bundled up on your spine. Okay. So like I said, that's kind of a rule of thumb, but you know, I can't say that that's always going to be the case. All right. Almost done. Okay, I'll work this over one more time. Start from the middle, push out. Any wrinkles or misalignments, you want to go toward the outside, not toward the center. Okay, that is good. I'm going to burnish everything. We're going to work the seams, and we want to do that before we lay down the two edges, just because it might need a little bit of wiggle room, and it's going to pull it from the outside, or potentially be tugging on these two pieces of adhesive, so it's best to work it before. Looks like everything is coming along great. Remember, when we put the tape down, it went across here, so work that in a little bit, and it'll grab the paper. All right, I think we're ready to do the ends. Okay, moving right along today. So I can see that I have some excess here, so when I flip it over, it's going to be a little bit thick. So I'm going to go ahead and try to push some of this in now. So that we don't have too much. See how that kind of pinches out? That's what I'm trying to push in. And this is not a very pretty process, but in the end, you won't see any of that. Same thing over here. Just kind of pushing that over. Okay. Much better. And then what you're really going to see is just this tiny corner in the end. So it's okay that it's not very pretty when you look at it. All that is going to be hidden. Okay? And then you can see the result. It's not too bad. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Some people are better at trimming. I've found that way too many times I've cut too deep, and then I had a brown corner sticking out. So like I said before, I'm much more likely to leave extra paper and try to figure out how to tuck it in than to trim too tight and not have enough paper to work with. Having trouble getting underneath this one. Okay. And then remember again, the last thing is all this gets layered with another piece of black cardstock anyway. So okay, beautiful. Okay, there we go. 7 1/4, 7 1/2. We are done with this part. Now we're going to cut, and I always custom cut these. I'm going to custom cut two, actually not yet. I take that back. Now we're going to work on the spine. We're going to lay the spine down, and then we're going to put a mat on top of the spine. On top of the hinges. I'm sorry, I said spine. I meant hinge. So here is my cheat. So what I do is I take an 8.5 by 11, and I want to use all 11 inches. So I have this nice flap left over on either side of the hinge, and this becomes the anchor that holds it to the back, the front cover and the back cover. So I don't like to trim this down, but that means, because I've got 4 pages, I'm not going to start on 1 inch or a 1/2 inch. It means I'm going to start on 1/4 inch. Then you want to start at 2 3/4, and you're going to score every 1/2 inch after that. And those score lines are 2 3/4, 3 1/4, 3 3/4, 4 1/4, 4 3/4, 5 1/4, 5 3/4, 6 1/4, 6 3/4, 7 1/4, 7 3/4, 8 1/4, and then you're done. Next, we're going to apply our score tape. This is my 3/8 score tape, and this is why I love it. It fits directly on these 1/2 inch score lines. which really speeds up getting your hinge put together. Okay. I'm going to do all the pinch pleats first and then come back and put score tape on the rest of it. So if you've got a mountain or a valley, that's where you're going to want your score tape. And then we'll come back and do the gusset part of the hinge after we've pinched everything together. Okay. That's my preference. I mean, it's really up to you guys, but I think that works best for me anyway. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and fold this over. There's one. There's two. And I press from the center out. And last one. Center out. Okay. So here we are. We've got our hinge. Okay. Oh, I forgot to tell you, the height of this is 6 7/8. 6 7/8. So the intent is that this fits very snugly inside the pocket page, which is 7 by 7. But if you don't want to deal with that, if that's too tight to work with for you, 6 3/4 by 11. But then when you put your pocket page over, you're going to have, it'll slide a little, and then you're going to have to decide, do you want all that slack on the top or the bottom? Most people don't do it quite as tight as me, but yeah, everybody's different. Okay, we're going to go ahead and put some tape on the hinge. And when I tape the hinge, I want to put the tape as close to the top of the hinge as possible. And that way, when I'm slipping my pocket page over the hinge, if I need to maneuver a little, I can without exposing any tape on the bottom. So just a rule of thumb. And why would I need to mess around with, why not just press it straight down? Well, as I said in other videos, sometimes you either don't get your hinge in straight, or just because paper doesn't behave perfectly all the time. When you're putting your score lines in and you do your folds, if all your tolerances stack in one direction, this might actually have a little curve built into it. Little things like that. So the keeping the tape away from the bottom gives you the opportunity to juggle the pages a little bit until when they're laying down, they're not torqued. Okay. And hopefully that makes sense. It's probably a little bit too much information for new scrappers, but for anybody who's built mini albums, you know what I'm talking about. Okay. The tape that I'm laying down right now is, we're going to come back to that probably last. The next thing we'll do is tape the back of this whole hinge mechanism and actually get it into, get it applied to the spine. And we'll put our liner down, and then we're ready to build the pages, and that goes very quickly. And then we'll wiggle the pages in and we'll be done building a 7 by 7 mini album. All right, I got all that down. What is the height, or the piece that the pocket will slip right over? Okay, burnish, burnish, burnish. Now we're going to flip it over. The back side is what's actually going to be adhered to this part of the book. So we want to make sure there's plenty of adhesive on the back of this. As you open and close the book, it will tug on that tape. Don't use glue. you'll be disappointed. It does not stay flexible, and at some point it'll become brittle and just pop right off the page. Use your score tape here. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and lay down this tape. And I'm gonna start by covering just the gussets, because I wanna make sure, and when I say gusset, it's the in-between piece. I wanna make sure when this is in the book that this part, this gusset part, does not wanna lift up. So I'm gonna make sure that that whole gusset gets covered. Half inch would be okay here too, where it's okay to go past that fold line. I'll go ahead and burnish all that down. So when we're getting ready to lay this down in the book, this way, I'll turn it this way so my writing's, we are going to center it between, we want to center this between the I'm tongue-tied today, between the spine and the cover and the back cover. So you're going to wind up with about a 1/2 inch on either side before it actually starts to curl up. So I want to try to dry fit this a little bit, try to figure out where that crease is. And I want to make sure when I lay this down that I work some of this paper into this fold so that it will adhere, and when I open the book and close the book, it'll actually take on this seam rather than try to glue it straight down and then have it bind up on either side. So the trick here is get your centerpiece down, go ahead and lay your tape down, but don't pull the tape off just yet. So we're going to go ahead and put some additional score tape here. Then we're gonna peel this, lay down the center. Then we're gonna take our score tool and work these angles before we peel off the rest of the tape. Okay, and that will help prevent these flaps, which are our anchors, from lifting off the covers. So let me find my tape. Here's where I'm gonna start. This is the most tape intensive part of building an album, is the hinge. And because it is so flexible, you really can't use glue like I did on the cover. The cover is relatively flat. I wouldn't use it on the spine, but the cover I would. But I swear I put down $5 worth of tape on the hinge. But you don't want it to fall out, so. Okay, once we put our, once we place the hinge in the book, we're going to further secure it to the book by laying another panel on top of it. So this flap here becomes anchored to the chipboard, but also becomes anchored, sandwiched between another piece of paper that goes on top of the chipboard. Okay, everything you see, most of the things you see me working with, less the actual cardstock, can be bought at our shop at www.scrapandcreate.com. And if you want to stay informed and inspired, subscribe to our site and you will be notified when we have new products or new videos for you to take a look at. And we appreciate your business. All right, I'm burnishing everything. And then remember, I'm gonna take off just the centerpiece right now. So I'm gonna go the center. Double check. If you are a little gun shy laying these pieces down, there is a trick that you can use, and that is to put some glue actually directly on top of the tape. It doesn't mean you don't use the tape, but you can use the glue on top of the tape, and it gives you a little bit of time to maneuver before it dries. Whereas with tape, as soon as it hits the other side, it's pretty much stuck. So if you don't have a lot of confidence in your ability to place it, then I would recommend just using a thin strip of glue to help you wiggle it into place. Now, having said that, I rarely do that anymore. What I'd rather do is go ahead and lay it down on the paper, and then if I'm not happy with the placement, I use this Undo product, which is unbelievable. You just run a bead of this along where you're trying to lift. Give it a minute, and then use this is my spatula tool, and you can lift it right off. It doesn't damage the paper you're pulling off, and it doesn't damage the paper you're pulling it from. It does soak into the paper and the chipboard, and you can't really use either one until it's thoroughly dried, and I would say like the next day. So I have laid down my hinges before and was really unhappy with it, and I used this product to lift it. And I was able to save my spine. You're not able to save the hinge because the tape is kind of destroyed. So sometimes if I do it just right, I can actually roll the tape off and put another strip of tape. Other times I actually have to start over. So it's just something to keep in mind. I've used it before. I've used it to take a pocket page off a hinge even because I laid it down crooked. So it's a valuable tool to have in your quiver, so to speak. All right, I think I've got these down. So I'm going to go ahead, and for this I have to stand, and you might wind up seeing the top of my head. But I can't visually see both edges unless I stand. So I'm trying to straighten my spine, my hinges out so they're standing straight up, so that when I look straight down, I get a pretty straight line or a pretty good idea of where the line is relative to the spine notch. And this looks pretty good. So we've talked about it before. What am I looking for? I'm looking for distance between here and here, here and here, here and here, and here and here. That tells me that I'm laying this down square. And that matters because it influences how your pocket pages will lay once you insert them. Okay, I'm in. It's good. I'm going to burnish this down. And then we're going to work the spine score line so that we get a little bit of flexibility on this piece right here. And I don't do this ahead of time. I wait till this part is laid down. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take one more piece of tape off. I'm going to work this side down. I'm going to go to the other side and do the same thing. And I'm going to, oops, wrong tool. Burnish this really well. That's what you see when you have a little piece of tape that's longer than the paper. And when I see those, I try to tuck them in right away. It's hard to do after you get 2 or 3 layers down to come back and pick those out. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to do the same over here. I'm going to go ahead and take off one more strip of tape. And it looks like, I didn't do this initially, but it looks like all of this will be inside the spine anyway. I was waiting to take this off because I thought it might actually travel across the spine, but it doesn't. It's going to fit almost like I planned it. All right, let's work that in. And you can see as I'm pushing in how it's starting to bubble this paper, and that's partly why you want to do this before you lay the tape down. You want the paper to figure out where it's going before you lay the tape down. Okay, just like so. Everything looks pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to come back and start taking off the rest of that tape and finish laying that down. And then we will quickly lay down some liners and then add our pocket pages. All right. I'm going to go from the center out. And it's pretty easy to see why you need, you know, 3 chipboard width, because you've got paper on the outside, you've got a liner or at least a flap that comes over, plus this, all having to fit inside that crease. So there's a lot going on there. All right. Okay, I can tell it's time for, we're almost done because my desk is looking like a mess. I got stuff everywhere. I need to come back and straighten up. Okay, that is down. I'm gonna work the spine cover hinge. Looking pretty good. It looks like we have an album on our hands. How about that? So hopefully everybody was able to follow along. And hopefully I'm talking loud enough. I have found that I start loud and then I get quiet. So I'll try to improve on that. Let's see. I'm just picking up some scraps to get a little bit organized. I don't have these pre-cut, so I'm actually going to set the book aside and we are going to work on building the pocket pages. Since that's already pre-cut, you guys don't have to wait for that. If you have seen any of my videos, I've done an 8x8 mini album featuring the Graphic 45 Imagine collection. And the process I used to build that book is exactly the same as this. The only difference is this is a 7x7 instead of an 8x8. And I wanted to use a slightly smaller format. One, just because I like the variety, but also I am building this mini album using what's called a DCE, a designer collection. And it doesn't have as many accessories as a complete collection. So basically what you get is you get your designer paper and you get some chipboard and that's it. So there's no ephemera pack. There's no tags and pockets, and there is no patterns and solids. It's kind of a mini collection. And usually they're always an older collection that they bring back. So it originally had all the pieces, and then when they bring it back, they only do a limited release. What does that mean? And why does that affect the size of the album? Well, it affects, sorry, I'm chatting and I messed up. I'm gonna go back and put this on, just leaving a tip of it exposed until I do my alignment, and then I'll pull the tape off. It matters because I have less of the coordinating papers to work with. So I only wanted to use a single DCE to make this project, so I had to make it a little bit smaller to accomplish that. Okay, so I've done this on the 8x8, but I'll go ahead and go over it again. Once, that doesn't look good. Anyway, it looks like it'll lay down flat. To expose just a small portion of the tape on your score line. And then we're going to marry up the corner, get that straight, and now I'll pull off the rest of the tape. So that is on, oh, I said I was on, I jumped the gun. Straight. Now it's sticking to me. I was on straight. I wiggle it up and down until it's where I want it. There I go. All right, so that is done. Now we gotta do the other side. Now the trick on the other side is use your hand to rake across so that you don't get a bubble. You want it to lay down as flat as possible. That keeps things like your insert from slipping in and out of the pocket too easily. So I use my hand to press this down. Go ahead and adhere that exposed corner and then pull the rest of your tab up, and then you've got a pocket page. So we're going to do this 3 more times because there's a total of 4 pocket pages inside this mini album, same as the 8x8. And then I also want to back up a little bit and tell you that these are 7.5 by 7. So each one of these panels is 7.5 by 7. You're going to, along the 7.5 inch side, score a 1/2 inch. And you're just going to do that for all 8 sheets. We take 2 of these sheets and put them together like so to make our pocket page. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do these last 3, and then we're going to put them in the book. And you can just disregard the page number itself. I did that for some planning purposes, but all you really need to know is that 7.5 by 7. Each one of these pocket pages, for the purpose of putting the album together, is interchangeable. They're all exactly the same. Okay. All right. So if you click on the More button, you're going to see the cut list for the mini album. And I'll always try to add the cut list. There will be a second video that I put out that customizes this base, and the cut list will be added to that video if there's a customization done. So for the purpose of this, it's just a base 7 by 7, 4 pocket pages, and their respective inserts. Okay, do this a couple more times. Get these together. We're almost done. And in case you didn't write it down, and I'll try to add this to the More too. The paper I'm using is Astro Brights. I'm trying to find where it says this, but it's actually by a paper company called Neenah, N-E-E-N-A-H, Neenah. And I really like their paper. It holds up really well. If you like super thick cardstock, this is not where to get it. The reason I found Neenah is I used to be big on Copic markers and like to do lots of coloring on my cards and stuff like that. And I liked Neenah White because it is just really good paper. It doesn't bleed if you're inking on it. So that's how I got turned on to Neenah in the first place, and I knew the quality was good, so that's when I started using their black. And I get it at Walmart, but it's easy to get at Dick Blick or any art supply store. I can't find it in Joann's and Michael's, places like that though. And also when you go to, if you go to, I did it again. If you go to Walmart to buy it, don't go to the craft section. It's in the office printer section. Over by where they keep things like invitations. Okay, I got my corner down. Looks good. Pull off the rest of my tape. I was just double checking it something didn't quite look right, but it's all good. Okay. Same thing, I'm just going to expose a tip of this, fold that over. Use my hand to press it flat so I don't get a bubble in my paper. Okay, that's 2. Okay, just a reminder, 7 by 7.5. Along the 7.5 inch side, score it 1/2 inch. Okay, don't forget to use your hand, press it down. Grab the corner. Okay, and we're gonna have one more. This is our last one. I don't even know why I try with my fingernails. Habit, I guess. Okay. My tab got stuck on the inside. There we go. That went down crooked, so I'm lifting it to try to salvage it. There we go. Always tell when it's Friday here. It's been loud all morning, and flatten it out. And the gardeners have all left the neighborhood. It just got quiet. Oh, see, that's not quite as, I'm gonna have to do that one again, but I'm not gonna do it while you guys watch. I'm just not happy with that. So, so those are done. I'm up. Okay, I'm gonna turn it right side up so the writing is straight. Same drill. We're gonna take up one part of the corner. We're gonna get the page in, and then we'll take the rest of the tape off. Okay, so I'm gonna slip it on, and it fits nice and snug. If you have any slack, I always push from the top down so the slack will line up on the bottom. And it looks pretty good. And that looks good. So I'm just tamping down this little corner here. I'm going to put in the next couple of pages. Make sure that everything is laying down in the book beautifully like this. And not like that. So that is laying down pretty straight. I'm pretty happy with that. So I want to make sure I do that on the next 3. For the purpose of this video, for the next 2, you guys will lay down your 4th page on your own. And that was a little bit too much exposure, just a tad, maybe quarter-inch. Why do I do that? I need my pick tool. And then fold it over so you can get a hold of it when it's time to pull it out. Okay. Now remember to push, this is my top, I'm going to push any slack toward the bottom. And then before I press it down, I want to get a sense that it's lined up where I want it with the next page. And the back end slipped out, so I'm going to tuck that back in. There we go. Lay it down. And you can see, this is why I spend some time doing this. See how far off this is from this? So that's why I don't have the whole thing glued down. This is my chance to wiggle it into the space that I want it before I permanently adhere the rest of the page. Okay, now I'm going to try that one more time, lay it down, see what it looks like. There we go. Looks pretty good. Pretty good. Last one. I burnished it so well, it didn't really want to come up. Okay, same thing, slip it over the hinge, work it down, push from the top down, and then we're gonna lay it over onto these other two pages that we've already straightened and straighten it. And now press it down. Did it shift on me? It did. Okay, they all look pretty good. Got a nice straight line here. And it's pretty straight on the bottom, but it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. So I'm happy with that. So I'm going to start taking out the rest of the tape and laying these down permanently. There we go. Didn't want to let go. Okay, double check one more time, top and bottom before I press. I'm pressing. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take this strip out. Looks good. Lovely, lovely. I'm happy. Okay, it's my guide page from the beginning. Over, pull out the last piece, and then we are just about done. So the other reason I like this pick tool is because of the hook, which does come in handy, especially when I'm laying my pages down. Okay, I'm happy with that. So if you can look, it's a little higher on this end, but it's actually. Is it? A little higher on one end than the other, but it's pretty straight. And those are the techniques that I use to try to keep my pages even and straight. And those things matter as you open the pages and you lay them one on top of the other. the more color you get here and more contrast you get here, the more obvious it is if it's not straight. So with that, we are going to call it for today. So the two things that remain unfinished is you need to add your 4th page. And I'm going to remake this, but not while you guys are watching. And add that here. And then you also need two pieces of paper to line it. And I did not pre-cut those, so I'm not going to cut those while you guys watch. But it just needs to fit tightly over this. And it's meant to smooth out these mitered edges so that when you layer your designer paper on top, you don't see this bump. It helps camouflage that. So you can also skip it if you want and just line your designer paper, put your designer paper right on top. I usually do that, but I mean, I usually use a liner, but it's really up to you. And if you're going to use a liner, I think that this is, let's see, let's go ahead and measure it. It's about 7 3/8, and that'll set you just inside the hinge area. It'll cover this whole piece and set you just inside the hinge area. Because remember, the cover and the back are 7.5 by 7.25. So if you were going to line it directly, it would be 7 and I just said it. 7 3/8 by 7 1/8. So 7 1/8 by 7 3/8. And that'll give you your 2 liners. All right, that's it. That is the 7 by 7 mini album. I'm going to go ahead and post this as a base album. And I've already got the 8 by 8 out there. As I develop new designs, I'm going to try to stick to probably those 2 are going to be the most common formats. So you'll be able to rebuild the 7 by 7 or 8 by 8 just based on this. And then when I come back with custom videos, it'll cover where to attach flaps and pockets inside the album, as well as layer on the designer paper that I used. So thanks everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate all the comments. Keep them coming, and I hope to be able to get more designs out to you faster as I get through this process and become just a little bit more skilled. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Please leave comments. I look forward to reading them. Thank you.